Welcome to Shifting from Grudge to Grit, Grace, and Gratitude. And we apologize for showing up as late as we have. Sometimes it's just technology that doesn't allow us to get here, but nonetheless, we've made it. And I'm really grateful to have Jeremy here. And I'm going to present. Welcome to Shifting from Grudge. Oh, I can see already my. And you can hear my laptop is already speaking here. So we are live on Instagram as well. Please excuse my co-host is not here this week, Jamila. She's not getting well, so keep her in your thoughts for speedy recovery. But nonetheless, with no further ado, I'm going to read just a brief bio of Jeremy, and then we can get into it. Jeremy Rodriguez sounds better if I say it. It sounds like you're in some sort of exciting band or some movement. So let's call it a movement. So, our topic today is sustainable success, how mindset and balance fuel lasting growth. We welcome him, a devoted husband, father, and a seasoned coach. Is it a coach, as in a sports coach? We'll uncover that shortly. With over a decade of experience helping people rise with resilience, lead with purpose, and build a life rooted in authenticity. And for those that know me, I believe authenticity is your superpower. Jeremy is going to share some of his personal and professional journey of growth, adaptation. Now, I'm intrigued by that word, and hard earned wisdom, revealing how to achieve long term success without sacrificing mental and emotional well being. Based in Florida, what have I missed here? A passionate speaker inspires his audience to take action, lead with purpose, and prioritize their mental and emotional well being. He had his fair share of growing and adapting, and he is open to sharing this with our audience. So without further ado, we a bit late into it. I just want to dig into it. Welcome, Jeremy, and thank you for your resilience and persevering with StreamYard and trying to get on here.
No, thank you so much, Anissa. I really appreciate that intro, and the goal is to live up to that. I'm a believer that you're only as good as your last at bat, right? For me, every interview is my first and last interview. I look at it that way. So I'm excited for you. I really love your energy. I really feel this sense of peace and calm coming through the screen every time you say anything. So it's beautiful. I'm really looking forward to this genuine conversation, this authentic conversation between you and I, so that anybody who listens gets the opportunity to just hopefully get something out of it.
Absolutely. I like these conversations. Firstly, thank you for your very kind and gracious compliment. I have strived to make sure that I'm keeping myself grounded because it's been a tough week. As you know, with entrepreneurship, it's not always easy.
Right.
I'm losing you. Are you back again? You're back again. Entrepreneurship is by no means an easy road to walk, but one that I'm very grateful for the opportunity. And I love the idea of these conversations to be raw, real, unfiltered. So grateful that you're going to bring that same energy to this conversation. Where did your hero's journey start, Jeremy? I mean, where exactly did you get to lead from this path?
So I was just to give you some
Are
context on
you
my back, just to give you some context on my backstory. Suffering for me was something that was extremely normal. It was something that I thought was life, and once I understood that there's actually more, I just really began this personal development journey. It started off in 2009, where I just started to indulge in a lot of a lot of work, a lot of healing stuff. I just really started to change my whole perspective on life itself. I didn't even know that positivity was an option. I didn't even know the law of attraction existed. I didn't even know that you can genuinely be happy at peace. So being on this journey now for 16 years, I've been able to see so many different aspects of it, and I'm just excited
Jeremy?
because
Sorry about that.
are you on here? You keep coming
I'm
in,
back. I
in and
think
out.
technology is messing with us today,
It
but
is.
we are resilient nonetheless.
Is that your service on your end? Because your screen keeps coming in and out.
It is mine. For some reason, it's just coming in and out. It was fine all the time. And now we're having a challenge. But
Hey,
let's carry on. If it comes backwards and forwards like that, I will come back again. So then you can just continue engaging the audience and we can pick up where we left off. This is life, right?
perfect. This is live and this is life, right? Sometimes we have a plan and things don't go accordingly. So the goal is to
No,
be able to pivot as you go in and out. It is
I
complete.
love that. Love it. So let's kick off again. Where did this all start for you? The context. I missed it. Did you share with the audience already?
Yeah, I did share, but I could give you some. I could give you a quick 30 seconds of kind of like what I shared. Basically, suffering was very normal to me. I struggled a lot with anxiety. I struggled a lot with depression, anger. I didn't know
Hmm.
how to deal with my thoughts, with my emotions, and I attempted to take my life 15 times. And after the 15th time, I've realized that there has to be a different way of coping with my emotions, because it's clear I'm clearly not succeeding at taking my own life. So what I realized is that instead of trying to take my own life, I had to figure out a way to sacrifice my old for my new. And I just indulged in personal development. I started going to conferences, listening to podcasts, reading audio, listening to audiobooks, and I just really, really indulged in just what it is to understand me more, become aware of my thoughts, become aware of my emotions, become aware of my behaviors, understanding the root causes of why I was doing everything that I was doing. And once I began to
Hmm.
understand myself a little bit, I was able to start making adjustments. And now, 16 years later, I'm in a position where I've created a new emotional home, I've created a new subconscious mind, I've created a new belief system, a new identity, and new habits that has led me to living a fulfilled, joyful, and peaceful life, to the point where I internally I genuinely need nothing. All my life I thought that the more I had, the better I was going to feel, not realizing that
Hmm.
I was just providing band-aids for my wounds. And it wasn't until I created that internal surgery that I really created this shift where I was no longer emotionally dependent on reality changing. And once I no longer became emotionally dependent on reality changing, that's when I became a magnet because of the frequency that I was operating in. And through that magnetic field and just that high frequency, I've been able to create a life that I genuinely love. But I had to learn to love my life before I had the things. And I think that that's something that a lot of entrepreneurs um, don't realize, is that we want the success, right? A lot of times why people can't sustain the external success is because internally they're still not successful. So the wins are able to buy people time, right? They're able to buy people time. But what happens when you realize that, okay, now I have some capital, I have some success, but internally I'm still not that successful. Eventually, once you see that the money doesn't have the weight that you thought it was going to have prior to having it, you have to go back inward. And what people ended up doing, despite them having the successes, they end up operating in the frequency of desire and fear, because now they're worried about losing the success, because the success has now defined them in their life. So this is kind of like the world
Oh,
that I've learned to realize. That's why mental health life coaching for me is extremely, extremely important. Excuse me, because it's once you're internally wealthy, where your thoughts are in a great place, your emotions are in a great place, your spirit, you just have this, your just energy is in a beautiful place. You're not emotionally dependent on that reality changing. So now, because I'm not emotionally dependent on reality changing, I'm not a slave to materialism. I'm not a slave to experiences, because for me the ultimate experience that we can live is mental and spiritual. So because I understand that, I focus, and I introduce people and I invite people to really focus inward, because once your internal is paradise, the external becomes not as important.
Man, I've got like goosebumps listening to you, and you're speaking life here, you're speaking life into the absolutely craziness that we live in, because yes, there's chaos, and yes, there's turmoil, and there's forever change, and some of it is toxic, and we come from that wounded spaces. But I'm going to ask you this. Would
Yes.
you turn back the time 16 years ago of the experiences that you had to go through to be who you are today? Or are you thankful and grateful and have integrated that version of yourself? Because you spoke to letting go of the old version to embrace this newer version. But the older version is certainly the real reason why you are here, with this conviction, with this courage, with this truth, being able to speak life. We've got Show Up to Win. I know who this is. I have to remember your name now because I interview so many guests. He says on the Instagram, I'm enjoying this episode. So, Jeremy, you've already, in the short space of time of 11 minutes, without technical glitches, you are speaking life here. But how are you integrating and thanking and recognizing the older version that have contributed to the person sitting in front of us today?
Right. So I have a beautiful relationship with uh my old version, because I understand that that version of me was a program, and it was a program that was unintentionally created. So
Mm-hmm.
that old version of me gives me an understanding of what to do and what not to do. So because I'm able to utilize my old self as a reference, as a guide, because of understanding everything that I felt, I keep that old self in the holster the whole time, right? And the thing is that when it comes to our old self, you have to have a beautiful relationship with it, because our our old self is like a sniper. It's consistently looking to see where are you vulnerable, where can it get you, and it wants and it wants to set up traps for us, so that we can fall back into those old thought patterns, into those old emotions, into those old ways. So for me, I look at it like that's my competition, and I leverage it, because of my old self. It keeps me grounded, it keeps me humbled, it keeps me prepared, it keeps me doubling down on my personal development, it keeps me focused, it keeps me in those meditative states, making sure that I visualize, because I understand that the moment that I get too comfortable, the moment that I get too comfortable, I'm going to be attacked. And because of that,
Mm-hmm.
I I have so much gratitude, because of this old version. I have no choice but to stay sharp. Because of this old version, I have no choice but to stay focused. Because of this old version, I have no choice but to be disciplined. And because I know what it is to make the choices that I made in the past, to have the feelings that I felt, to have the thoughts that I have, that is my reference guide on what not to do. So your old self teaches you so much about what to do, but I think more importantly, it teaches you what not to do, because you can't make a same decision that you've made in the past thinking that you're going to get a different result. So again, to kind of double
Mm-hmm.
down thought on gratitude is like, man, where would I be without my old self? How dare I ever be ungrateful? How dare I ever become entitled? How dare I ever do anything to devalue this old version of me, when this old version of me is the reason why this new version was birthed? If I didn't know what it was to feel being that human being, and involving all of that suffering and all of that pain and all of that confusion, I wouldn't appreciate this clarity and conviction that I have today.
Oh, man, like I'm listening to you and I'm like, yes, yes, hell yeah, because this is exactly it, what we are conditioned to. if we don't do the inner work, we condition to shame those versions of ourselves or the parts of ourselves where we sabotaged previously. I like that you're saying there's like a sniper. You've almost got this inner Jedi, if I can refer to it as that, you know, watches like, okay, when is it showing up? And okay, it is part of me. And I accept that it's part of me and it might be triggered somewhere, but instead of pressing the trigger to snipe, you're saying, well, hold on, let me retrieve this. And I'm going to practice self command in this moment and say, I'm in control here. I'm the one who presses the trigger, not you.
Yes.
And but not from a place of disgust or shame or disappointment or dissonance in any way. There's no more this dissonance between that version. Yes, thank you, Marissa. Marissa just reminded me that show up to win is Dwayne. So thank you, Dwayne, for joining us here. Dwayne Morton is a past guest and also amazing, amazing story and book for those that want to go and find him again. Dwayne, please just post here for us what your book's name. I think it was Bulletproof. And we're talking about Sniper. And so this is all kind of maybe the reason why you're joining us as well today. But I love that you're saying that, you're not, there's no more that dissonance part there. It's like, hell yeah, you are the reason I am who I am today.
Yes.
So I'm
Let's
going to
double let's
ask
double
you,
down, Anissa. Let's double down on this thought because I think that this is so important. Okay.
yes,
Every human being is operating off of a frequency, right? We have shame being the lowest frequency. Then from
yes.
shame, we have guilt. Then we have apathy. Then we have fear, desire, anger, neutrality,
Mm,
willingness, love, joy, peace, enlightenment. The problem when we experience a lot of things in our past that we're probably not the most proud of,
yes.
those things tend to bring us down to our shame, right? And human beings, if you look at human beings and human being behavior, they're constantly running away from that shame, right? They're constantly running away from that
Mm,
shame. And for me is we have no business being ashamed of anything in our past because at the end of the day, all that is awareness. And when you're operating your life trying to resist yourself from feeling that shame, you're gonna make a lot of poor decisions. So when we think about the sniper that's trying to see where we fall short, a framework that I have that really helps me, right, is every single time. I'm talking about every single time that I'm going to make a decision. I ask myself, is this decision impulsive or is decision logical? Because when you make an impulsive decision, you're nurturing the past most of the time until you have really created a new emotional home. So a lot of times what people don't realize is that by you slowing down and being extremely calculated with every decision you make, that can create new habits. And by you creating new
yes.
habits, that new behavior creates new results. Because if we think about this, right, we have the frequency that we're operating in. That frequency leads us to an intuition. That intuition leads us to a mental impulse. That mental impulse leads us to an action. That action leads us to a result. So the problem is that if
Mm,
we don't nurture the right frequency, and the domino that we're operating in, it's a negative one. That domino is going to create a this intuition that's going to be negative. That negative intuition is going to create a negative mental impulse. That negative mental impulse is going to create a negative behavior. That negative behavior is going to create a negative result, which is why it's so easy for us to self-sabotage. A lot of times
mm,
human beings, they may have all of the intention to make the right act, to do the right action, but when you're operating off of the wrong consciousness, operating off of that wrong state is going to create the wrong feeling, the wrong thoughts, that's ultimately going to work against the action despite the intention of that action. So again, slowing down, and I'm
Uh-huh.
gonna give you a short story that's gonna bring everything full circle, right? So
Sure.
I was on a plane heading to Fort Lauderdale. When I was on that plane, I ordered a drink, right? I said, "Can I get a cranberry apple?" I got the cranberry apple in my hands, and I ended up looking at this cranberry apple, and I said, "Was this a conscious decision that I wanted this drink, or was this an impulsive decision because this is something that I normally do when I'm on a plane?" And I paused at that moment, and that simple pause allowed me to take a different action. I said, "Hey, listen, I'm all set with the drink. Let me get a water." She said, "No, I can give you the water as well. You can have the drink." And I said, "No, no, 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 because this decision was impulsive. It was not logical. I know that this drink serves my past more than it serves my future. So because I didn't intend I'm gonna slow down because this is so important what I'm sharing. Because I did not
Mhm.
intentionally plan to have that drink, I cannot have that drink because that decision was not a logical decision. That decision was an emotional decision. And because my emotion is rooted to my past, I knew that at that moment I could have done two things. I could have self-sabotaged and had
Mm.
that drink and relapse on the work that I've done, or I could have paused, overcame that initial craving, give it back, and then get that win, right? So I had to make a decision between I could get that short win, which was indulge in the craving and have the drink like I normally
Yeah, yeah,
did,
yeah.
or I can make a logical decision and have a long term win that continue to nurture the new habit, that continue to nurture the new frequency, that continue to nurture the result that I actually want, opposed to the results that I've been getting.
So, Jeremy, I agree with parts of what you're saying, but a part of me is saying logic is kind of back to the brain and the ego mind, right? And so logic and ego is where we have the illusion of control. What I do love what you're saying is in the pause, in the moment, I'm not making that impulsive choice, which is linked to the past, because I'm going to, as I always do publicly and raw and unfiltered, say, when I'm emotional if I'm in a very bad negative state or I'm disheartened by something, I don't make the right choices with food. I'll go for the chocolate. I'll
Right,
go for the crisp and all the negative, bad choices in my eating because I'm emotionally soothing what is kind of sitting with me in that moment, right?
right.
So the part that I disagree with is to use the logical mind
Hmm.
because the mind is on that mind stream of thoughts and we can go into the monkey mind trying to rationalize and get logic from it rather than feeling, which is more heart centered. And if I'm feeling through my heart, I'm feeling from a different state and a different frequency. So I may be wrong, and I'm up for us debating on
Yes, no,
this.
let's do it because I
Let's
think
debate it.
this is extremely healthy, right? So
Yes,
when you think about the power of feelings,
yes.
right? If everybody can control their feelings, then people will make a different choice all of the time, right?
Mm,
So for
mm,
me, I had to figure out a way to be able to leverage something against the feeling. So because my mindset is something that I've nurtured through this personal development. I
sure,
want I want to be stronger with my mind than I am with my feelings because I know how easy it is to give into my feelings. And because I
sure.
understand that the ego's job is to protect my old frequency, now is I
Mm,
have the ego, I have the emotions against the thought. So because I prep my thought process and I prep my mindset to be more powerful than my emotions, that gives me that window of opportunity to create space between me and the decision. And
mm,
by me being able to create
beautiful.
space between me and that decision, that allows me to make a decision that I know it's right opposed to it feeling right.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's that mental fitness and agility that you have cultivated in order to get to that point. So it's not entirely, there's nothing wrong with going with the head or being led by the heart, but you should know that you've cultivated that emotional or mental regulation or agility to make an informed choice. Is
That's
that's what I'm hearing? Because what you've decided to do is saying, well, hold on, if the mind is the one thing that sabotages us all, right? And it's always connected to the programming, the matrix that we've been in. We have to almost no, not almost, we have to unlearn. It's that unfiring and unwiring of those neural pathways that connected to the choice of the cranberry apple drink, which was pure indulgence. Now
yes,
you're saying, well, hold on. If that was pure indulgence, but now my intentionality is to be physically fit, choose well because the water is would be more optimal and better for my health and well-being. Then hold on, the space between, it's like I think it was Viktor Frankl that said between stimulus and response, there is, I get this wrong now, but you know where I'm going with this. There's almost that choice and that space in between that in that short pause, we would be making better decisions. We would
correct,
be accessing our inner Jedi so that we know that we are that inner guide that you spoke to earlier on is what is referred to in, I don't know if you've ever heard of positive intelligence. They focus on this mental fitness where he says you access your inner sage. And if you had to access your inner sage, that would generally be in a pause before you act. And I
yes,
love this. I mean, I absolutely love it.
yes. I got Anissa. I got tired of reacting to life. Right.
Yes.
Every time I would get information, every time I would encounter a decision, I was always reacting to it. And when I
Mm,
think to myself, what life I was creating by consistently reacting, I was not proud of the life that I
mm,
was creating. And the difference between reacting and responding is having the ability to make a decision with a thought opposed to an emotion. And
mm,
when you're able to do that, and you're able to gain confidence, and you're able to double down on your ability and your mental grit and your mental fitness to be able to make decisions that are different than the ones that you've made in the past, that leads you to a conviction that really helps you create the life that you want, but most importantly, navigate through those times almost effortless
yes.
when sniper is trying to interfere with what you've created.
Yeah, I mean, I love that you focused on, that conditioning part. It's, am I going to stay in that old story? Because that story is almost on repeat. And if we want to create a new story and a better version, I don't know who says emotions is your energy in motion. And if everything is energy, everything is a frequency, then yeah, if we're going to choose based on that poor, we didn't have a great frequency in our service earlier on, but vibrationally we were both aligned to this conversation is happening no matter what. And I don't want to jinx it, but everything is fine right now in terms of the connectivity. So it's as easy as that quick switch. It's that pattern interrupt in the moment to say, well, hold on. I'm going to flip the script right now. I'm going to move from a negative vibration to a positive vibration. And it's not about toxic positivity. We always speak about toxic positivity and toxic resilience. My co host loves to speak about. And it's true, we shouldn't underestimate that toxic positivity and resilience is also a negative state of being in because it's rescue savior mentality and it's in a survival mentality that we are in. I do
Correct.
want to bring us back, Jeremy, to your story that you spoke about earlier on. And if I heard correctly, because the signal was still poor at that time, so 16 years ago, you had a dark night of the soul experience where you wanted to give up on life, and you said that was it. There's nothing here for me. This doesn't make sense for me anymore. So that was the catalyst for you to take this journey, right? And where you are today. But from then to now, what other dark night of the soul experiences have you experienced? And how did you show up in those moments? Because wanting to take your life is really, it's like you don't have any more faith, no more hope. You just feel um, desperate and there's nothing more. Now, what else in the trajectory of 16 years ago to now has occurred? And how did you bring yourself back then?
Right. So, just to give you some context, my a lot of members of my family, including the people that were responsible for raising me, they struggle tremendously with dealing with their thoughts and their emotions.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, their way of coping with their internal world was mm, not the most positive, to say the least, right? So,
Yes.
having to see the people that I love more than anything on this planet almost lose their life consistently to substances, and me have to witness those consequences of other people's decisions, for me has always been my biggest battle, because I think there's nothing more challenging than figuring out a way to live a peaceful and joyful life and still seeing the people that you love suffering,
Yeah.
right? So throughout my journey, I've seen just so many wonderful lives of mine's been taken. Just to put this into context, in the last 3 years, I've lost over 25 people, and the majority of those losses have been to overdoses.
Oh, no.
So when I think about that, I think to myself, those are the consequences of the decisions, and the root of those decisions is the negligence that people have had towards their mental health and their mental
Mm,
well-being. And when I lost, and when this time around, just to give you like an actual, I'm going to give you an actual situation that took place, and then I'm going to give you the framework that I use that can actually help your audience if they're ever dealing with absolutely anything challenging. So I was on a session on I was on a session on March 31st. It was 9:24 in the morning. I received a phone call, and that phone call was that my father had passed away. My father finally took his last breath. That was this year. But let's go back before my father passed, right?
mm.
So my father struggled with his substances, unfortunately, ended up on dialysis, ended up experiencing a lot, a lot of regret. And he just continued to deal with his shame through substances despite being on dialysis. So on March 1st, my father calls me. He was in the hospital. Excuse me, I'm a little emotional, but
It's
my father
okay.
calls me. He's in the hospital. And I didn't think much of it because this was a normal thing, right? My father and my mother going in and out of the hospital was already a normal thing. So I'm like, he ended up in the ICU unit, the intensive unit. So I go over there. I see him. He's doing okay. I travel back to Florida. He ends up getting a cardiac arrest. I end up going back, seeing him. It was just like a back and forth thing. And then for the last 2 weeks, I knew things started to get really serious just based on the conversation that I was having with the doctors. So I'm looking at this, right, and I'm like, man, the actual event of my father passing hasn't happened yet. But what tends to happen a lot of times is that we premeditate the event, and we suffer
Mm.
extremely more than we should prior to the event because of the anticipation of the event. So
Sure.
at this point, I what I would tell myself during this 31-day span is, I will cross every bridge when I get there. And then this framework that I will teach my clients really helped me just overcome, be present, and not indulge so much in the suffering despite the severity of the situation. So here's the framework. The only thing that can cause suffering is your thoughts and your emotions. That's it. Like that's it.
Mm.
Is nothing external. Is all perception, and it's all how you're interpreting what's going on outside of you. So my thought, so the first step is we have to confront the thought.
Mm.
What is the thought? Let's just confront it. The thought is never good or bad. The thought is just a thought, and based on your perception of that thought, it makes that thought good or bad, and then that perception is going to lead to an emotion, and then the emotion affects the thinking. The thinking never affects the feeling. The feeling is what ends up affecting the thinking. That's why the thinking goes at 100 miles an hour. So
Absolutely.
so I get the thought, the possibility of my father passing away, the emotion. Once I confronted the thought, I had to identify what's the emotion that's showing up. The two emotions that showed up for me are anger and sadness.
Mm.
Anger because, man, my father's at this stage, at this point, on his last bed, possibly at 57 years old. I just created a lot. It just created a lot of rage because I'm thinking to myself, man, you could have done so much to prevent this. And then sadness because one of the most important people in my life, his life is actually at risk.
Sure.
So what I did, rather than avoiding those emotions, because whatever we avoid controls us, I allow myself to actually process. Because
Yeah.
if you think about the biggest reason why so many people struggle with being happy is because they're trying to be happy. So
Yeah.
I leveraged that. I leveraged that right there. I said, you know what? If when you try to be happy, you can't, how about I try to be angry and I try to be sad? So by
Love
actually
it.
trying to be those things, it makes it harder to be those things, and it allows me to be able to process the emotion. And then what I do is, so we confront the thought, identify the emotion, process the emotion, and then I ask myself, is this something that's in my control or out of my control? Because in this situation, it's something that's out of my control. I take that energy and then I ended up doubling down on content while I was going through this process of my father literally breaking down right before my eyes. So in a 31-day span, if I had not mastered emotional intelligence, I would have been a wreck. Because when somebody
Yeah.
passes away instantly, it's like a shock to the nervous system, is a shock to the emotion, and then you process. When you're watching that take place right before your eyes, in a 31-day span, my father lost his kidneys, he lost his lungs, he lost his mind, he lost his heart, and he lost his life. So every single time the doctor would come in, they would tell me, okay, hey, listen, lungs are gone, kidneys are no longer functioning, mind, no rationality, heart. I'm like, man, I had to keep on taking these blows to the chin. And what I had to do is I had to, in real life, in real time, turn all of that negative into something positive. But I was able to do that with the mental framework that I created. So we don't realize that giving ourselves that grace to suffer will minimize suffering. But the problem is this, right? And I'm gonna slow down with this because I think that this is the most important part of all of this. If my emotional home would have been a negative one, my father's situation would have allowed me to justify that emotional home, and now I can exercise that emotional home without a defense mechanism, not realizing that that just gave me all of the reason to exercise my truth. So when something outside of us happens and we indulge aggressively in those emotions, more often than not what you're expressing is your actual truth. Because a lot of people will say, man, like, this is your father, like how can you possibly be okay? It's not that I'm not okay. The thing is that I give myself permission to suffer, but that window is no more than 5 minutes. Because at the end of the day, me over suffering over what's happening with my father does not change the outcome. So imagine this: if I have two things, right? Two things. I love this type of conversation. Two things. If I have a negative emotional home, the situation with my father allows me to reinforce that emotional home, because now I can exercise that emotional home with no defense mechanism, which reinforces the nervous system, which reinforces the beliefs, which reinforces the subconscious mind, which reinforces the neurons, which reinforces the prior connections, right? That's if I have a negative emotional home. If I have a positive emotional home, by me not having the emotional intelligence to overcome these blows while they're happening, I could have created an old emotional home despite all of that work, by not being able to process these things in real life in real time. So I basically say all of this because a lot of us don't realize we're constantly looking for permission to be our truth, to be ourselves, not realizing that you may not like that version. So you want to make sure that you understand your emotional home. What's my emotional home? I want you to think to yourself, every single time you get information that doesn't work towards your favor, what's the first emotion that shows up? That emotion, because if anything outside of you can trigger something inside of you, that means that that thing is inside of you already,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
if once you understand your emotional home and you can really prioritize that, and you can really create the one that you actually want, at that point you protect that with all costs. So yes, this situation with my father is sad. Yes, it has
Mm.
made me angry, but it has reinforced my emotional home of gratitude, peace, and joy. And because my emotional home is gratitude, peace, and joy, I'm able to take something like a death of a loved one that I truly love with all of my heart and turn it into something positive, because internally that is what I live every single day.
That's so beautiful. Firstly, my condolences and real sorry for your loss because it's fresh. It's been a few months only. And so I acknowledge you for being able to speak about it as openly as you do and to share the gifts of your experience and the absolute wisdom from the experience that you've now been able to convert this. I love that you've given it a language, an emotional home. So what does your emotional home look like today? Is it um, unhappiness or grudges or resentment or disappointment? Or is it actually grace, gratitude, love, kindness, and joy? And so when you frame it and almost own that emotional home, you will live up to that frequency. It's
Correct.
easier said than done because the program is so deep rooted. So it takes practice. It takes that sniper acute awareness that you spoke about earlier on, to be able to be so aware that you are going into the old frequency. However, what I also thoroughly loved what you said is that the authenticity of the older emotional home that was there, be an allowance of it, because I'm known as the reliable one, the survivor, the strong one, and the overcomer, the phoenix rising from the ashes. Bullshit. I
Mm,
mean, quite frankly, I am a human being having a human experience. And when I am down, just because I overcame and rose above doesn't mean I can't feel anger,
exactly.
disappointment, you
Exactly.
know. So I'm aware that that's in my emotional home, but what I will give power to is the reframe of that. So
Correct.
if I'm wanting to be sovereign and I allow myself to have the power in that experience, it means that I will latch onto the grace and the gratitude of it.
Yeah.
And it's so amazing that that's why I captioned this program Shifting from Grudge to Grit, Grace, and Gratitude, because it is a continuous journey. It is not linear. That is why I asked you what other dark night of the soul experiences has arisen in your life, and how did you cultivate the almost self command, the EQ, the emotional intelligence, the adaptive intelligence, the contextual intelligence that you possess in order to hold your own, but also to be an allowance of the suffering, because it's part and parcel. But in our faith, there's a saying in Islam, it says, with every suffering, there is ease, not there will be ease, meaning that as you're going through suffering, ease will also be there. But it depends on you, on what you're willing to access. And
Exactly.
so
I love that.
I'd love to hear more. I mean, we've ended officially the time, but I'm happy to continue for another 5 minutes or so.
Yes.
And then, is there anything burning that you want to share with our audience? Anything that's coming up in this moment right now, because we don't rehearse this. We just channel whatever's coming up. So what's coming up for you right now?
So right now the main thing that's really showing up is the importance of creating mega self-respect. What I find is that when you consistently show up for yourself the way you want to show up for others, because it's very easy to show up for others. For whatever reason, human beings really struggle with showing up for themselves. When you show up for yourself, when you make yourself first, second, and third in your life, when you really really prioritize your needs, your wants, your desires, and you don't look at you prioritizing yourself in a selfish manner, by you showing up for yourself, you develop such a self-respect. And by you developing a self-respect, the last thing you want to do is let somebody down whom you respect. Most people can let themselves down rather easily, more than they let other people down, because they haven't cultivated that self-respect. So when I think about this journey and what helped me gain this self-control, what helped me gain this perspective on life, what helped me really create this frequency, it was the internal work that so many of us avoid. When you
Yeah.
look at human behavior, when you look at human behavior, most human beings are after two needs, right? The need for significance and the need
Mm.
for love.
Mm-hmm.
And when you really see people's crave to feel worthy, to be seen, social media wouldn't be what it is if people didn't have that desperation to meet that need of significance.
Agreed.
So the problem is that certainty, uncertainty, significance, and love, those needs, those needs can be met by you, right?
Mm.
So when you think about every decision that you make, what if the needs that you were prioritizing are growth and contribution?
Yes.
So now you look at problems as opportunities. You look at situations with different lens, because now you know no matter what the situation is, the more uncomfortable it is, the more challenging it is, the more you're able to cultivate the human need of growth. The more you're able to
Mm.
cultivate the human need of growth, the more skill sets, the more experiences you create, the more you're able to contribute to another life. But
Mm.
how can we go from significance to growth? How can we actually make that transition? So I'm gonna give you, and we can end this with this. I'm gonna give you what I literally did that helped me create this bulletproof conviction where I'm no longer in need of any type of validation from the world. Right. So the first thing I had to realize, remember, this is coming from a man who was extremely insecure, that always needed
Mm.
validation, that always needed to fill a void. The first thing that I realized is that I had to learn to accept myself. But it's not just accept the good and the bad, it's accept the good, the bad, and the ugly wholeheartedly.
Mm. Mm.
Then I had to learn
Exactly.
then I had to learn, Anissa, to respect myself. What does it mean to respect yourself? It means having the ability to say no, not just to others, but to yourself.
Yeah.
It's not the yes that you become proud of, it's the no that you become proud of. So if you're able to truly implement no consistently and then create a boundary that's non-negotiable, that's going to help you develop that self-respect. Then you have to nurture that self-esteem. Our life, we will never be able to be greater than our identity of ourselves. So being able to really understand how you see yourself, how you feel about yourself, and how you treat yourself is going to be big, because most people, they destroy themselves internally. The way they talk to themselves, they talk down on themselves. They don't really spend enough time uplifting themselves. So because of that, their self-esteem is shot, and because their self-esteem is shot, they're not realizing how low their standards are, and because they're not realizing how low their standards are, they're not seeing how much they're tolerating. So your
Oh,
self-esteem is a clear indicator of how much you're going to tolerate in life. Because if you truly
yes.
have high self-esteem, you're going to become more aware, you're going to take off the blinders, and you're going to realize, why is this in my life, why is this person in my life, when I have this different space internally. So then from the self-esteem, you really nurture the self-care, which is just prioritizing the external to the best of your ability. But then here's the one for me that I've learned to really fall in love with, is self-love. People have a misconception of what self-love is. When you think about self-love, you think about reading a book, or doing your nails, or doing your hair. But what I've
Mm,
come to terms is that self-love is having the discipline to protect the relationship between your thoughts and your emotions, because the only thing that can cause suffering is the relationship between your thoughts and your emotions. The only thing that can cause success is the relationship between your thoughts and your emotions. So the greater you can protect that relationship, and the greater demonstration you can have of discipline between your thoughts and your emotions, the greatest indicator of how much self-love you actually possess.
that is just so, so profound and beautiful. And, what I'm hearing you say is absolutely all of the self love, self respect, self acceptance is ultimately self leadership.
Yes, exactly. And we're living in a world, Anissa, where people want to lead people without having the ability to lead themselves, to become self-aware, to become emotional intelligent, to really be able to have impulse control, emotional regulation.
Mm. Now, Jeremy, the one self respect one is actually, it encapsulates, because we try to be selfless, being everything to everyone. And then we're not selfish human beings, because we're not designed to be selfish. We're deeply empathetic, loving, kind souls. That's what we are. But life as it happens and the egoic side makes us sometimes selfish. The part that's right in the middle, that's the core, the center, the foundation, is actually self respect. And what's underpinned by self respect is knowing that you love and accept and care for yourself well enough to establish the right boundaries. And if you are able to establish boundaries and being able to assert it in the most gentlest, loving, respectful way, it means that you are leading yourself. But to close off on our point, if we know ourselves well enough, if we heal ourselves, we will better lead ourselves. Because without that, the one part right in the beginning that you said, you cannot have success on the outside and it looks all pretty and a facade and an illusion and the mask of having it all together when the internal is empty, scarce, not lack, it's living from lack, it's living from dis-ease. So I want to say that that was for me the most beautiful takeaway from today, is that for us to move forward, we've got to lead ourselves and truly believe without a shadow of a doubt, all parts of ourselves are in service to us and to others, in the same way, like others, dark parts are in service to us to cultivate that level of creating the example and modeling what we need to for others. What is one final point you want to leave with our audience?
Protect your frequency, with all of your heart and soul, because you will never ever ever be greater than your frequency. Your
Mm.
frequency is the domino effect to your life. And
Sure.
once you understand that everything, and I mean everything, that you're going to do on this planet, and everything that you're going to strive for, is going to be for a little itty bitty feeling.
Mm.
Once that little itty bitty feeling becomes your standard, and you're no longer emotionally dependent on reality changing, and you're completely detached from the physical world has no choice but to support your internal world.
So live from a place of non-attachment. I'm going to go with that. So there's no suffering. Be aware of what desires will lead to your suffering. This has been such a beautiful conversation. Thank you for those that joined us on Instagram and YouTube. We actually ended up having a 55-minute conversation nonetheless, because it has been so beautiful and profound, and listening to your wisdom and just the amazing energy that you also come with. So I'm really grateful for that. And that frequency has certainly touched me today in a lot of ways, and I've learned a lot from you. I'm going to end our live stream, but do stay on, because I normally do a short debrief. I am running slightly late for my son, but I've already notified him I'll be there in a jiff. I need to pick him up from work. So thank you, and join us again next week with our challenges, our tech difficulties, but we showed up nonetheless. So really grateful that I decided to still wait and be aware that maybe Jeremy would show up. And what a great session this has been. On that note, thank you so much, Jeremy.
Absolutely. So grateful. Thank you so much. This has been an absolute pleasure. And I really appreciate your energy, your calmness, your zen, and your peace exuberates through the screen for sure.
Thank you. I'll end our live and just stay on